The Lakers pulled out a pesky zone defense that the Raptors had problem with, and they had no answers for it. Let's talk about it on today's Raptors Postcast.
This is the Raptors Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Toronto Raptors. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
For the very first time, welcome to this episode of the Raptors Postcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the number one sports network covering your team every day. We're coming to you live after the Raptors 110-93 loss against the Los Angeles Lakers to open a 5-game road trip on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Locked On Podcast feed. I'm Zulfi Sheikh, credentialed journalist covering the Raptors and the NBA for over 2 years with outlets like Sportsnet and Raptors Republic. And now I'm one of your humble hosts of the Raptors Postcast, breaking down each and every game with you guys. Thank you for tuning in. And with me, Duane Notice, Canadian professional basketball player and analyst with us. Duane has represented Canada. He's been part of the Raptor system with the Raptors 905, and he's still hooping professionally in leagues like the CEBL. All right, on tonight's show, we are going to talk about how the Raptors slowly but surely crumbled against zone defense yet again. We'll break down a third quarter that proved costly in more ways than one, and we'll wrap things up with a fun segment we like to call Take Notice. All right, Duane, I'm going to throw it to you here. The Raptors start a 5-game road trip with an L. They're now 3-7 against teams from the West and 13-12 against plus 500 squads. But I think I know where you're going to go with this. Zone defense has continued to be an issue. But what were your impressions coming out of this game?
Yeah, you mentioned it, zone defense for sure. But before we get into that, to me, it's just a accumulation of what the Raptors have been for the past couple of years. It's just a talented team, but at the same time, they're always in these nitty-gritty games, and they just can't figure out a way to kind of bring it home and land the plane, if you know what I'm talking about. So there's always the right ingredients, just got to figure it out. But you mentioned the zone. I want to talk about it because being a guy that played at the University of South Carolina, we utilize the 1-3 zone a lot, and it's just crazy how in college they – rely on zones so much, especially you think about historic teams like Syracuse, et cetera. And then when it comes to the pros, it's not being used as much because players are so talented. When you play a zone, you're obviously forcing teams to shoot the ball at a high percentage. And if teams are unable to execute or shoot the ball at a high percentage, then it proves to be effective. So when it comes to, we all know Nick Nurse ran the zone as well, too. That was a big thing for us when we won the championship back in the day, 2019. So we got to figure out a way the Raptors got to figure out a way to kind of execute against the zone. I know they don't see that a lot, but teams like to switch it up when they can't get stops, and the Lakers traditionally are not a good defensive team, so they had to have known that J.J. Redick was going to junk it up and mix it up. So they have to be prepared when teams want to change the defenses for sure, and I think that's a big focal point and key going forward is figuring out how they can attack and get good shots out of that offense when it comes to zone defense.
Yeah, I think you said it. It was junking it up a little bit. It was getting guys feeling uncomfortable. Teams are progressively playing more zone defense against this Raptors team. They're the fifth fewest points in the NBA, the Raptors score against zone defenses. And you said they have to be able to shoot, right? If they're not going to be able to break the zone by getting to the middle or getting inside, they got to have guys who can beat you with the three-point shot, and they just haven't had that for this entire season. They're a bottom 5 3-point shooting team. And this game, 7 of 32 from deep. That's just not going to cut it. I think a part of it, too, was just their confidence started going away the more these shots started missing. You saw some guys passing up shots late. I think I saw A.J. Lawson give up an open 3, especially if you think of him as a guy, he's only going to get so many instances to come in. You want him to really take those shots, but that zone defense can really make you overthink it sometimes when you're trying to break it. You think that's just what it is for this Raptors team right now? There's just that confidence trying to play against it isn't there. They must know it's something they clearly have an issue against. So it comes to a point where after so many games, why aren't they able to really figure it out?
Yeah, I do think it's a confidence thing. You hit it right on the head, man. As a player, sometimes, like you said, when the shots are not falling, it kind of gets into your head and your mental mindset, and it starts discouraging you from doing the best things you can be doing and being a star in your own role. Raptors have a lot of young players, so for them, they're trying to figure out ways of how I can stay on the court. I know a guy like A.J. Lawson who also went to my school, University of South Carolina. Shout out to my alma mater. But my boy A.J. Lawson, trying to take advantage of the opportunities he's getting. And it's tough, man. In the NBA, they always say if you get a couple shots, you want to make sure you're going at least 3 for 7, 3 for 5. So like you said, once you start missing a couple of shots, I think it does kind of feed into the back of your mind, and then you start passing those shots. And then ultimately that could hurt the defense. Hurt your offense at the end of the day, because when you're passing up open shots, it's the equivalent of taking a horrible shot. So they have to figure out how or who or what the hierarchy is going to be, because without having that consistent 3-point shooting, you have to either establish something down low in the paint, and that's tough with a guy like Jakob Porter not being in the game. And we saw it also on the defensive end. A guy like DeAndre Ayton, who hasn't been an offensive juggernaut this season, had an explosive game with 25 points. You know what you're going to get out of LeBron James at 41 years old, which is still phenomenal, by the way. But you know what you're going to get out of Luka Doncic, who's probably top 5 point guards in the game if you're talking about, SGA and then other point guards that, join that list. But you got to be able to contain the other players and make sure that those guys aren't X factors. And DeAndre Ayton was a factor today. And I think that was an indictment of not having the best big man or the tallest, the biggest, the strongest big man on the Raptors roster down low, holding it down the paint.
Yeah, DeAndre Ayton, for those wondering, finished 10 of 10 from the field, 13 rebounds along with the 25 points. Like you said, Duane, he hasn't really been a juggernaut on offense for the Lakers. He hasn't been the most consistent. But when you're as paper thin at the center spot as the Raptors are, and that only got worse in this game, it's going to be an issue for you. And the Lakers were able to take advantage of it. And like you said, when things compound, like when you can't shoot inside and you can't defend them inside, those are you're trading low volume looks for high volume looks, and it's just not really going to work for you in most situations, the math. But we're going to talk about a bit more of that coming up. We're going to break down a brutal third quarter that included losing Colin Murray-Boyles and compounding that center issue, all of which played a big part in this loss as we continue the Raptors postcast after this. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. That's Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern, and they've become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during happy hour always brings something new, boosts, bonuses, and surprises, and the timing is perfect. It's right before games, right before the weekend starts. If you take the Lakers over in this game, you probably hit it. They had a pretty good time. So before a tip-off, click the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. That's every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, the official on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. This episode is also brought to you by Gametime. During basketball season, there is nothing like being in the building. The energy, the crowd, the first big run that gets everyone on their feet. I know Raptors fans travel really well to Crypto.com Arena. There was a lot of red jerseys there tonight. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. That's where Gametime comes in. The Gametime app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets. It's fast, simple, and without any guesswork. Browsing the Gametime app is straightforward with just a couple taps. You see the view from your seat. There's no hidden fees. All costs are up front. So whether it's an NBA game or another live event, everything is right there in one place. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets for the NBA with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase with terms applied. Again, create an account and redeem LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. All right, as we continue this episode of the Raptors postcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, be sure to check out Sean Woodley with Locked On Raptors in the morning, getting an in-depth analysis even further on this 110-93 loss. All right, Duane, we're going to hit our turning point of the game where things really change for the Toronto Raptors.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
All right, let me know if you agree or disagree with this, but to me, the turning point here was the third quarter. Now, the Raptors only lost that quarter by 6 points, but I did feel like a lot of the momentum shifted to LA for a variety of reasons. One of them being the loss of Colin Murray-Boyles, like we mentioned. He already had an injury to his thumb, his left thumb. It was wrapped up. I think he hurt it a couple of weeks ago against Miami. And then in this game in the third quarter, Luka Doncic swiped at it in the paint when CMB was going for a layup. He left the game. He was eventually ruled out. And I thought CMB was having a great impact in this game. He started 3 of 3 from the field. He finished 5 of 7, 11 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 blocks. All 3 of those blocks, by the way, were against Luka Doncic. So he was being disruptive on both ends of the floor. And for a Lakers team that doesn't really stop you much at the rim, CMB was getting inside. He had a couple dunks. So again, a lot of momentum back and forth there. And then compounding on that, Lakers hit 5 of 9 from 3 in the third quarter. That is 2 fewer threes than the Raptors made all game. So when you lose a guy like that who brings that much energy, and then you're losing the math battle along the way, it felt like they really just kept leaking oil in that third quarter. That's when it started. And by the fourth, their gas tank was empty.
Yeah, completely. And I think you made a lot of great points, and I agree with that for sure. CMB, when it comes to injuries, it's so difficult because it could either propel a team or it could hinder them. And sometimes when you have a guy who's playing that well, it's either the next man up mentality or it's a huge blow to the confidence of the team. We've been talking about confidence. It's been a big word all day when it comes to the Raptors in this game. So I think CMB's activity was very impressive. A couple weeks ago when they were playing Houston, the way he was guarding Kevin Durant really impressed me, showed me that he's not afraid of the challenge. And like you said, having those 3 blocks on Luka Doncic just shows you a young guy who's not afraid of the moment. Could obviously be looking up to this player, but instead he wants to compete. So it was definitely a blow losing him, and you definitely saw the reactions and the results of that for the remainder of the game. You talk about the 3-point percentage, man. In today's era, 3-point shooting is so valuable. If you're not able to do that as a guard or have that type of accuracy from a team standpoint, then it's going to be very difficult to win. And then when you compound that on the fact that even though the Raptors had fewer turnovers than the Lakers, they were unable to convert those turnovers into buckets. And that is a difficult thing to do as well, especially when it comes to leaving halftime and it was a close game, and understanding that you guys, could have the Lakers on the ropes and take advantage of that. But instead they kind of weren't able to, take advantage of those turnovers, like I said. And then the last thing I'll say too is the free throw disparity, man. Like, the free throws was, I think the Lakers shot 82%, and I think the Raptors were 67 or something like that. And again, those are free baskets. You say it all the time. You get to the line, you want to make a team pay, and when you don't convert on those free points to the charity strike, it definitely shows up in the final tally.
Yeah, like the math battle isn't just going to be on your side when you're not making it easier on yourself. Like you said, the MO for this Raptors team for a lot of the season has been converting off turnovers. They like to run out and get in transition, score against unset defenses, make things easier on themselves. And this is, again, like you said, a Lakers team that isn't good defensively. They haven't been all season. They're a bottom 5 defense, and they've been struggling lately. Mind you, the Lakers were on a second night of a back-to-back. Yes, Luka Doncic didn't play in that one, so he was fresh, but LeBron did, and those guys were still impactful. A lot of these guys played. So for the Raptors not being able to take advantage of that, it does feel a little tough for them. So I'll kind of go back to the CMB of it all. If he is hurt for an extended period, hopefully not, knock on wood, because obviously they're paper thin at the center spot. Like, what do you think the Raptors can do to adjust here? Is it just throwing Sandro Mamukelashvili into the starting lineup, or do you see a different path here? Now, Sandro was good, finished with 20 points, 8 of 12, 6 rebounds. He started really hot too. He was 5 of 5 to start. He took a beating in this game as well. A couple really hard falls. But yeah, so like, where do you see the Raptors going from here if they lose CMB for any time?
Yeah, it's tough. It's going to be another opportunity for the young guys to step up. Obviously, we know the connection that they have to the 905 and utilization of those players. But yeah, playing smaller, having Sam come in, I think is going to have to be the move going forward until they're able to get CMB back or Jakob Porto. So just having to shift those guys. The good thing about the Raptors is that they have length, they have size. So even if they were to go technically small ball, at the same time, they're still going to be lengthy with a guy like Scotty Barnes playing point forward, a guy like Brandon Ingram, BI, who is the catalyst for the team. And I think that when we got to talk about, the take notice segment, I'm thinking about like the hierarchy of how, we should run the offense, because I think that's something that they need to establish as well as the identity of who's their main guy and then going forward from there. But yeah, CMB, huge loss. Someone's going to have to pick it up because even the rebound disparity, there wasn't too much today. I think they just lost by 5 to the Lakers when it comes to the rebounding battle. But that's going to be something to key in on the future, especially when you have other teams that have these, dominant bigs in the league right now.
Yeah, all right. Let's take it to the take notice segment here. You kind of teed it up here. So for those that are wondering, we obviously have Duane Notice with us, our resident professional player and analyst. So Duane, we wanted to give you a bit of a segment here to give us some stuff you notice, some observations, whether it's a player or a trend, and give us a player's perspective on what you saw from this Raptors loss.
Yeah, from this, like I said, I just think they have to establish an identity of who they're going to have. Because I feel like when it comes to the Raptors, the third and the fourth quarter is sometimes shot selection is a big key for them of who's taking the right shots, whether it's Emmanuel quickly, is he setting up the offense, he's looking for his own offense, being aggressive, when to take a shot, when to set someone else up. Are there possessions where BI is not touching the ball? Are there possessions where we're just going straight to Scotty? So they have to figure out what that hierarchy is. And once they do that, I think that they'll be more successful, because every day, it could be anybody's game, yes, but you want to still follow a trend. You want to still follow a game plan of, all right, this is going to be the leader that's going to get us into action or get us into things. And even if it's not his night, we're still going to look for him in the third or fourth quarter, because when it comes down to those clutch moments, this is who we want the ball to have, or who we want which person we want to have the ball in their hands at the end of the game. So I think that's something to look forward to going in the future, because with RJ being out again, like, who's going to be the guy that's going to step up in these moments where the games are close, but you kind of need to get over that hump, that edge, and make that run for the better.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because you kind of mentioned it. RJ was out in this game. Jacoby Walter's still out. Jakob Poeltl's still out. So the Raptors are facing a bit of an injury bug right now. And obviously we mentioned Colin Murray Boyles got injured and he left this game. Maybe he's out. Hopefully not. Emmanuel quickly returned in this game. It was his first game back after missing 2 games. He was okay. 9 points, 4 of 9 from the field, 7 assists, with just 1 turnover. I wouldn't say he necessarily put his imprint on this game, and I think that's a bit of what you're talking about. If it's a guy like that as your floor general down the stretch, I think Brandon Ingram as well is an interesting case for all of this, because against that zone defense, at least early on, I felt like he was one of the only guys who really had any momentum against it. He went 3 for 3 in the second quarter. He had a couple big shots to keep the Raptors in it. They were down just 1 point at halftime, and this is where I speak to the third quarter where they really did leak a bit of oil. That's where the Lakers went on a bit of a run and took over this game. But even then, it felt like a lot of reliance on Brandon Ingram to really shoot their way against the zone defense and hopefully figure some stuff out. And I don't necessarily know if you can rely on that every single game. And to me, I think that's part of the reason why this Raptors team has been around 500 against these teams that are more competitive. Again, the Western Conference, you're 3-7 against West Coast teams, and you're just 13-12 against plus 500 teams. And right now that necessarily doesn't matter. It does, but it's not costing you as much as it will against in the playoffs. So how much of something like that do you think goes into this, where the Raptors feel like we have these guys, we just need to rely on them, and they're thinking the hierarchy needs to just be a certain way?
Yeah, I think it's it's a chemistry thing as well. They're still trying to get used to it. We had BI last year, but he wasn't playing. So just adapting to the roles of all right, we have BI now, so we need to understand what the hierarchy is. I just think it's something that they'll figure out over time as more games will go along. But it doesn't help that guys are in and out the lineup constantly because of injuries. So that makes it tough to establish that kind of pecking order. But again, you can't have BI try to shoot your way out of tough situations. Yes, he's a very talented player and probably one of the best offensive players on the team right now, 3-level scorer. And he's so effective in that zone because of his length and his ability to kind of keep the art form of the mid-range alive. He's basically baby Kevin Durant, just not at that level. So yes, he has that offensive foray in that package, but we don't want to rely on it. So there has to be some type of offensive set that can get these guys the ball in places or opportunities where it's a little bit easier for them to score. Because I think he's making too many tough shots, and sometimes that when it doesn't fall, it takes away from just the overall energy of the offense, and then trickles down to the defense. Then it becomes a whole snowball effect that we constantly see when it comes to the second half, when it comes to the Raptors.
Yeah, I think Brandon Ingram's the type of guy that's going to be willing to take those shots, and he's going to want to shoot you back into a game. That's just the type of guy he is. Like you said, he's a professional scorer, professional bucket getter, but relying on that as much as the Raptors have, you've seen it kind of cost them in a couple games. They had no other choice against his own defense. Again, they weren't really shooting well from 3 this game. But it's a part of the reason why their fourth quarter scoring isn't as good as it can be. It's part of the reason why their offense has Peter in or out, especially with a guy like RJ Barrett out of the lineup. So it's something you're going to hope to see them adjust, but it's only going to get tougher from here. Unfortunately, the Raptors continue a 5-game road trip. They're going to be taking on the Golden State Warriors next. But Duane, I think we're about to wrap it up here. So before we do, any final thoughts on this game about the Raptors losing 110-93 to the Lakers?
I think it's a good teaching moment. I mean, again, they lost a close game to the LA Clippers on their home court a couple of days ago. So coming to LA and losing this one, I think there's still optimism for the rest of the road trip, and they just got to take it in stride. Again, not knowing what the result of CMB will be. Some of these guys will probably be banged up for the next game, but if they're able to control the controllables, I think that they'll be all right. Because, again, one thing I'm not worried about when it comes to the Raptors is their effort. I think their intensity is always there, and their intention is there. It's just that sometimes it's not put together the right way. So I'm optimistic about the rest of the road trip. Hopefully guys can get healthy. And, guys like Sam could build on that confidence and continue to have great games. And then they can, key in on who they need to key on because I think defensively they could have been a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that'll do it for us. For myself, Zulfi, Sheikh, and Duane Notice, thank you for everyone who tuned in live and for those listening the morning after. Again, we know West Coast road trip. These are going to be some late starts for us. But if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to Locked On Raptors on all platforms. Don't forget to comment below if you have any thoughts of the Raptors losing 110-93. Again, our very first episode, so thank you everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate it, and we're going to keep this thing going. But we will be back on Tuesday, live after the Raptors visit the Golden State Warriors. We will see you then on the Raptors Postcast. Peace.